The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Granbury ISD races for the trustees. We've got 3 positions that are up. We've got Mark Jackson that won't run again, so that'll be an open seat. And it looks like in that open seat we have Terry Leuven, John Mark Graves, and Billy Wimberly. And then in place 6, Barbara Townsend, who is the trustee board president. We have Jeff Hastings running against her. And then in place 7, Paula McDonald, who's a sitting trustee and incumbent, and Karen Lowry is running against Paula McDonald. So if you look at the names, it looks like we've got 3 pretty good conservatives. And boy, I tell you what, and they're not the incumbents, but we've been through a lot here in Granbury ISD in the last year. And we've had shows on Brain Pop. We've had shows for the books, you know, the sex and the porn, all in.
The gay clubs,
age-inappropriate stuff for grade schoolers and elementary. So there's been a lot going on, and there's been, the incumbents have been asleep at the wheel. It's been like zero coming from them. Maybe a committee here, maybe a committee there. Let's put a policy together a year later. So now these 3 seats that are up, very important, people, and we need to take a look at it. And we need to look at it in the frame of reference of, do you know the incumbents? Most people do. So if you know the incumbents and you think they're good people, fine. You see them at work. We say it all the time. It's local. You see them at church, wherever it may be. But have they done their jobs? Can they be rehired as a trustee? And I say on all 3 counts, no, a resounding no. Maybe great people, but they haven't stood up and done their job to protect the kids.
And I'll tell you, by the way, Mike, it is Dr. Paula McDonald. She was, originally titled PhD, and then someone kicked some dust up, and now they call her a THD, whatever the heck that is. But she is an example of a typical politician that will say all the right things and try to pacify the conservative base, but then through her actions, or by her fruit rather, judging her by her fruit, she has nothing. She has not stood a single time other than there at the very beginning. She stood one time, they slapped her hand and said, "Don't you do that again," and she fell right back in line. I went through and listened to all of her podcasts, and listening to her, she says all the right stuff, but go back and look at her record. She is barren as far as fruit goes.
My question for the 2 incumbents is, what have you done for me lately? You've got people who have been on there for a while. One of the incumbents has been there for a long time. And we've had some serious emerging issues at a GISD in the past 12 to 18 months, and they've not been there. They've been asleep at the switch, asleep at the wheel. They're not ready for the 2022 problems that we have, and it's time to elect some new blood.
And those incumbents, with Barbara Townsend, the current school board president, look at what she's presided over. She was the vice president during all the lockdowns, didn't speak up. Even when we tried to get them to unmask our kids at the end of the year, she still voted to mask the kids. We have had to drag her and the rest of that board kicking and screaming. Both of the incumbents were bond pushers. They wanted to increase the current tax rate by 20 cents. I mean, it's like they are so out of touch and out of step with the conservatives that are in this community and that should be dictating how public education goes. I don't see how they survive this. Now, they may be nice people, and I get that. But like you said, Mike, they can be nice people and also suck at their job. And those 2 need to be fired yesterday.
And the bond pushers, here's what gets me about the bond. And I don't want this to be all about the bond, but it is a big factor in this race. And we're looking at if the bond would have passed, almost $500 million in debt with the other bond. But what gets me too is they pushed it, the 2 incumbents. So what we have is somebody that pushed the bond. We need the schools. We need this for the kids. We need that. We need all this money for, $500 million in debt. Yet when it failed by 80%, almost.
It was 70-30 with the aggregate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 70-30, huge. When it failed, Do you think they came back and said, hey, look, we really need this? There has been radio silence. So if you really needed that, $500 million in debt for the citizens, why didn't you come back with a different proposal? They're not coming back with a different proposal. So that tells me that you pushed something we didn't need, or the numbers you gave us were wrong. There's got to be something wrong with that. So the bond is a huge issue. And there's also a question in my mind, and you talked about the doctor or the Paul McDonald, THD, PhD. I remember looking back a ways on the GISD website, and it was PhD. So it was Dr. Paula McDonald. So is this a PhD or THD? Or, folks, you go, oh, who cares whether it's PhD or THD or whatever it is, or whether you call her doctor or not, or whatever. Wherever she gets her degree from. Does it matter? Yes, it matters.
It's about public trust.
It matters because it's a resume that you give the people.
Wait a second. Not just public trust. We're talking a trustee of a teaching institution, being Granbury Independent School District. So more probably than any other possible position of trust in our community, being unclear or having less than a full degree, or being squishy with maybe your credentials in an educational setting, that is the worst place to do it. So to me, it is especially repugnant if there's any kind of problem there.
Well, and I'll tell you, all credible universities and institutions are accredited by either the state, level government, or the federal Department of Education. And I've read up on this, and, when I first saw it, I thought, whatever. Mm-hmm. But the more I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, this Faith Christian University, which exists out in Florida, it's a single area, a single unit of a strip mall next to a broke-down tire shop and a karate studio. That institution is not accredited by any sort of legitimate organization. It's not accredited by a state. It's not accredited by the feds. It's not accredited by anybody. And doing some more research into this, she loves to say that, oh, they're attacking me because of my religion. No, this has nothing to do with religion. This has nothing to do with you being a devout Christian. If you're a devout Christian, you should know better than to present something that's false. But when you have somebody that's on the school board, if Granbury ISD would not recognize her doctorate and pay her the stipend if she would go back to teaching, which, they would not, why should we recognize it? And why should she be out there flaunting it? And to take it back just a few years, you go back to former Commissioner Dick Rohn. He got prosecuted under the Texas Penal Code for presenting himself as if he had a degree, which he did not.
Are we looking at like a doctor, a PhD, or are we looking at a doctor of ministry? Are we looking at a THD?
A THD is a doctor of theology.
Okay.
And from what I found, there are about 2 major universities, like normal universities, and then there are a lot of faith-based universities, 350 that are recognized by the state or federal government for being an accredited university. But this Faith Christian out there in Florida, again, in that little strip mall, there's not a classroom, there's not anything. It's actually what they call a diploma mill. That institution is only recognized by a fraudulent deal called the Trans World Accreditation Institute or something like that. Their acronym, as funny as it is TACI, TACI.
Back to what GISD had on their website, and they have now. They used to have PhD, right? So now do they have THD for
Yes.
Paula McDonald? So they had to go back in and change all the PhDs and all the things on the website.
Not just the website, the portraits that are in the administration building, she had to change everything on her website. It's like when people started asking questions about this, and thank goodness we have the Internet Archive, because all this is easily provable. Type in the Wayback Machine, plug in Dr. Paula McDonald's website, and you will see what we're talking about. Everything was changed around the time that this went to a legal board for remedy. She was having a conflict with a realtor in town.
When this came up, of course, this is one of the issues, and I'd like to say now that anybody for school trustee for GISD, you're more than welcome to contact the show and come on. And if Paula, you want to explain the THD, the PhD, whatever it may be, you may have, your own reasonings for doing this and having Barbara Townsend or whoever.
She identifies as a doctor.
I'm more interested in the fact, for me personally, of seeing what the situation was with the THD and PhD, in the situation of, did Barbara Townsend being the school board president, how did this get changed on the GISD website and all the paperwork and in the building and all that? And why was it changed? Did it need to be changed? What transpired with all that? And that's kind of my thinking of, you can be a doctor, you can call yourself kind of whatever, but when you get into this kind of a mix, and if Paula McDonald wants to come on the show, the Blue Shark Show, any of the candidates, Barbara Townsend, Jeff Hastings, Terry Leuven, John Mark Graves, Billy Wimberly, Karen Lowry, any candidate want to come on the show, please contact me, the Blue Shark Show, and we'd love to have you on and kind of explain what you're going to do, what you did, and you will be asked questions like, Paula McDonald on PhD to THD, and Barbara Townsend will be asked questions about, along with Paula McDonald, because they're incumbents, about what they did about the books and how they did, what they did, and why the attorneys, what the attorneys did and what the committees were, and that's why they have people running against them, like Karen Lowry, who was on the book committee with Monica Brown. So Karen Lowry decides to run, and, Karen's a good, strong, conservative person that's fed up with this stuff.
She absolutely is. And, just to piggyback one more time on the stuff with Paula McDonald, have you ever known a doctor that didn't know the initials that came after their name, whether that be MD, PhD, EdD, whatever? Have you ever known a doctor that graduated from a legitimate university that thought that they had earned an EdD, but turns out they earned a PhD? No. Nobody
No,
does.
because they spend years working on that PhD or THD.
And it's funny, the other thing that came out of this little investigation that I've undergone is she managed to earn her doctorate almost to the date, 1 year after she earned her master's. What legitimate university can you earn your master's and then a year later you earn your doctorate?
Well, Nate, I did a little Google search, by the way, and for accredited THD programs, they say that it's a rigorous program of sometimes 4 to 5 years. If it's sped up, the student can sometimes complete it in 3.
And Paula's transcripts show that there was 1 year between the date she earned her master's, which there's a video of on Faith Christian University's little BS Facebook site, and the date that she earned her doctorate. And, we don't try to make all this about these like tertiary issues, but when you're running for a position of public trust and you can't be trusted to tell the truth about your background or your education, what else is she going to lie about? What else has she lied about? You couple this with the fact that she says all the right stuff on her podcast and does absolutely nothing toward that end, she's got to go.
I would like for Paula to come in or call us. Love to do an interview, sit in the studio and talk about this and kind of explain the process of why this happened, maybe why the school, whether it's Barbara Townsend, whether it's Dr. Jeremy Glenn, how all this started. Now, this is place 7. We're talking about Paula McDonald and Karen Lowry. And I touched a little bit on what Karen Lowry was, running for. And
man,
I think
her kickoff party was off the chain, by the way. Have y'all ever seen that many people or elected officials at a school board kickoff?
There hasn't been many full campaigns of, countywide races, like major, elected official campaigns in the county that you haven't seen that many people.
My first school board meet and greet that I ever went to, there was maybe about 5 or 6 people there. Mike, you were one of them. Don and Reen were there. There was only about 5 or 6 because 5 years ago, this was not something at the front of everybody's mind. But now that we've uncovered how much of this liberal indoctrination is going on, that room that had over 100 people walk through those doors that night, I've never seen anything like that.
You know, Paula and Barbara may not actually stand for that, or may go, oh, there's no, liberal indoctrination. But when you find brain pop issues that we did, when you find the book issues that we did, and it takes so long for them to try to handle this, and the books are still in the libraries.
And not only that, Barbara and Paula both voted in favor of that $25,000 CRT grant, where they give $20,000 to the student teacher and $5,000 to their mentors. And in part of that grant, they directed the district to hire a equity chief. Now, it's convenient that they say, oh, we don't have to follow that part of that program. But any other time there's another program that comes through, they say, no, we have to do it exactly the way that they are dictating.
And we talk about indoctrination of the students. Well, with TASB, Texas Association of School Boards, and TASA, Texas Association of Administrators, they get indoctrinated in and of themselves with the trustees, with the administrators. So, you take somebody that, in all accounts, probably is a good person, and you indoctrinate them into this to where they're in the muck and they don't do anything about it because they get that, that whether it's commissioner's court, city council, we all have to vote together. We all have to be one team. We all have to be on the same page. No, you don't. You do the right thing. And if you all vote together for the right thing, then that's great. But if you don't, then you shouldn't be berated for doing that. So, we've talked a little bit about Barbara Townsend, the trustee, the school board president, and she has somebody run against her, Jeff Hastings, who used to be in charge of security for GISD.
Oh, he was the security chief and the school resource officer going back at least the last 12 years. He's very well known by not only the parents, but the students and the teachers as well. Jeff has a great vision for the future of the security there at GISD, and I'm very excited for him to start laying that out.
Being in law enforcement, it really it didn't sit well with me when GISD dropped the SRO program. Precinct 4 constables used to handle that SRO program, and everything that I heard at the time they were handling it was the district was very pleased with the job they were doing. All the administration at each of the individual schools seemed happy with it, but they dropped them and they went to their own thing. There's some hybrid deal that they were working for a while, and now they have what appears to be some straight just security guard program. Well, this is 2022. Uvalde just happened a couple of weeks ago or a month ago. It seems like school shootings are going to be part of the modern lexicon. Why are we choosing now, as an up-and-coming, one of the largest or one of the fastest-growing counties in the country, why are we rolling back our security? Why are we dialing back keeping our students safe in an era where things are more dangerous for students? I just don't get it. So I see this as a great opening for Hastings to come in and really right the ship when it comes to security.
And that's another issue. We talk about the books, we talk about CRT and all the social issues and LGBTQ, the club that the English teacher, sponsored and all this. And I don't want the security issue to get lost, because you're right, coming from a police background. And what kind of we found with the security issue, and I've got some public information requests that are still out. I'm going back and forth because I have to pay for them.
You're not telling me they're playing games with you, Mike, are you?
I think they are, because I'm one of the only ones in the last, there's two of us that had to pay for information requests in the last 2 years and 9 months, and I'm one of them. So I think I might have struck a nerve with, we're talking about security now, with the security team that was hired. Happens to be the husband of one of the assistant superintendents. So, I'll supposedly 8 others put in. So we'll have to see, what it is, how this is going. And this could be a whole nother story. It may not be anything, but usually if you do an information request and they kind of put stops in your way, usually there's something.
You're on the right track is what it basically is.
So we'll look into that. And like I said, Jeff Hastings, the former security guy out there, I think he would be great and be an asset to that board of trustees for security reasons alone, let alone being conservative. But for security reasons alone, I think he'd be a good one. And, Barbara Townsend, who's led the school board.
Right into the ditch.
You could say good or bad.
Right into the ditch.
And once again, folks, we've talked about Paula McDonald and Barbara Townsend, and I have no ill will No hard feelings about them as individuals whatsoever. But I have a problem with the way they've done their job. And I think it's time for the citizens to step up and say, we need somebody else. Now, Mark Jackson, we'll talk about place 5, is not running again.
He said public service is no longer worth it in his opinion. So good
For Mark
riddance.
Jackson?
Yep. Said it in the paper.
Well, when you're used to, everybody slapping on your back, saying, giving you affirmation from kids to people in the community, they don't watch what you're doing. They don't understand what you're doing. In the meantime, your taxes skyrocket up. And in the meantime, you push for $500 million in debt, like we've already said, and then you don't get it. And then you don't do anything about it.
Oh, there's a crisis. Oh, y'all voted it down.
Yeah.
We're just going to ignore it
We'll
now.
show you.
And we're actually, something that I think that they're doing is they're trying to put on a show for the next time. And I've been saying this for a while. That next bond, mark my words, is going to be more than what they asked for before. And what they're going to do is stack up those portables outside the schools. They're going to let the buses get into states of disrepair. They're going to have shortages of people for whatever reason. And then they're going to blame it all on the people that voted against the bond.
I think they're going to wait a little while before they come out with this follow-up bond. I'm going to tell you why. If they would have come immediately behind it with a smaller, targeted, more accurate bond, the people are already aware. The people are scratching the surface whenever they're told something. They're going to ask hard questions and look at the numbers in a hard way. And what was going to happen was they would then have realized the first bond was a huge boondoggle, because the second one, if it would have had any chance to pass, would have had to have been a responsible bond. Well, they can't do it immediately because people are going to put those two things together, and the big scam that school boards often pull will be exposed. So they're going to wait a while. They're going to let the buses get in disrepair. They're going to give it, I'm going to say, a couple of years. They're going to let that run down, let the memories of the people fade a little bit, then come back with a bigger bond.
And shame on them.
Yeah.
They should do the right thing at the right time for the people. And if it gets kicked down, if it should have been $200 million instead of $400 million, so be it. And they didn't. You're right. They didn't target the bond. We've had numerous, stories and shows on the bond, but that's what we get with Barbara Townsend, Paula McDonald, and Mark Jackson. So in place 5, we have Terry Leuven, John Mark Graves, and Billy Wimberly. And I know Terry Leuven. I've spoken with him a few times, and he seems to be very conservative. He seems to take a look at that book situation, and he's on the same page as we are with this show as far as, a lot of that being porn and smut and those books needing to be out of the library. So the other two I haven't talked to, and if you guys want to come on the show, Billy Wimberly and John Mark Graves, be more than talk to you, see what your platform is about. Haven't seen you around as far as any of the conservative groups, meetings, things like that. Not to say that you're not conservative, but would love to meet you guys and see what you're about.
One of the things I really like about Terry Leuven is that he brings with him a corporate efficiency background. He, throughout his career, would go into organizations and operations and identify the areas of opportunity to lower costs and the areas of opportunity to streamline processes. And how that translates for the taxpayers and their well-being is he would be one that there is fat, there is fluff within the organization of the GISD administration, and he would be one that would be able to come in and identify those areas, help consolidate some positions, and help lower the tax burden for the taxpayers. That's one of the things that I really like about him is his business acumen and then his vision for the future.
Yeah, I was really glad to see Terry jump in the race for the simple fact is he brings the business experience. One of the things that's obviously lacking on that board, and the bond, is in my opinion, was proof of that, is nobody with a sound economic vision for the future of GISD. And I'm hoping with his experience that Terry will bring that vision to GISD and we can get this ship righted, and he can give us a bond in a short amount of time that's a real bond that people will be proud to vote for.
Sound and targeted.
That's right.
For what we need, how we need it, and then moving forward.
Now
built from the bottom up instead of the top down. Throughout the last few months, we've learned that the way that they started that last bond was not what are the needs and how much do we need to increase the tax rate to achieve those needs and meet those needs. It was how much can we raise the tax rate that the voters will still go for. And that's how they decided at 20 cents even. They said, boom,
Pie in the
20
sky.
cents.
Yep.
Now let's build from the top down. Terry's approach is a bottom up. Hey, what do we need? And is there anywhere that we can make ourselves more efficient in the process?
Almost like zero-based budgeting.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Talking with him, that's one of his big things is he says, look, I get it. Bureaucracies and the government is so used to this use it or lose it mentality.
Right.
And that has to go. Like, we as taxpayers cannot afford that.
Well, and that's where the private sector always trumps the government. Is they're better at finding waste, fraud, and abuse. And so if nothing else, Terry's going to bring that corporate mindset is I'm going to find the waste, I'm going to find any fraud, I'm going to find if there's any abuse, and we're going to fix it.
As it looks now, we've got place 5, 6, and 7 up for re-election, and we've got Barbara Townsend, Jeff Hastings in place 6, and Hastings would bring a huge help with the security issues along with the conservative issues. And from what you guys are talking about, Terry Leuven about business, we've got John Mark Graves, Billy Wimberly. Terry Leuven would bring in conservativeness along with the business aspect of it, which would be great for the bond. And we'll probably need a bond moving forward. So what a good one to be in. And then you have Karen Lowry that would bring, with her deal on the books and whatnot, a moral compass to that trustee board.
And really, this is more or less a dream team. When looking at it from a movement standpoint, we've got Karen on the social issues. That's kind of her focal point. Terry on the business side, how are we going to handle the growth? And then Jeff Hastings with the school security, all with their areas of expertise. And they're all kind of, if you talk to them, they all kind of see eye to eye on the areas of expertise of the others. So it's like, if you want more efficient schools, if you want safer schools, and you want more morally sound schools that don't have satanic cartoon porn and jihadi sympathizer material in the library, this is a no-brainer.
And we've got it. And folks, go back and look at the other episodes. This is not just, blowing in the wind stuff. This is your elected officials, Barbara Townsend and Paula McDonald, have to answer some questions on why they let this occur. They've been there a long time. And why they haven't fixed it. And that, in my mind, is a reason to say, you've been there, thanks for your time, it's time for you to go. And somebody that can come in and watch this administration, watch the teachers, and put the kids first. Not just saying that, but actually doing that.
Well, fixing the school board issue, it basically fell into the bureaucratic quagmire. That's where we find ourselves, and that's one thing I want to say about Karen. She's a doer. I've been on the periphery of the school book issue, kind of paying close attention to what they've been working on. And Karen has had her nose to the grindstone from day one, along with Monica Brown, busting their behinds at every turn, every day, keeping people informed, reading the books, getting in front of the school board. She's a doer. She's not a talker. She's not going to fluff the situation. She's not going to give flowery language. She's going to put her nose down. She's not going to complain, and she's going to do the work. And that's the kind of person I want on our school board.
So we've got the elections coming up. And once again, I'll give this to all the candidates running for school board trustees. Please contact the show, the Blue Shark Show, and we'd love to have you on to explain your platform. We'll talk to you for some hard questions. Before, we wrote some questions out and put them online, and we had people come in and we did kind of the softball interview for people to get to know them. And that's good for people to get to know your stance and know where you fall on the issues. And I think it's almost time for the school board where if you want to come in, you're going to be asked some of these hard questions. Whether you're a candidate, now you don't have a voting record as a candidate, so we'll have to go off of, what you've done in the past, where you've worked, things like that. But as an incumbent, you're going to have to answer the tough questions. So I'd appreciate everybody say, hey, love to be on the show, and we'll put you out there where people can see you and understand your issues and explain some of the things that you've done over the past few years.